Hey everybody, welcome back. This week, and actually next week too, I want to talk about editing. This is not going to be a how-to edit, but it's going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to talk a little bit about my philosophy of editing and some of the techniques that I use. And I'm also going to share some thoughts with you from an article that was recently published by Pacific Content by Robin Edgar, who's one of their editors too. And I thought it was really great. I'll share it in the show notes because it sums up a lot of the things that I think about, and it offers 4 steps before that you can do while editing to make sure that your edits are not bad. And the thing that I always talk about with editing and is that it has to feel natural, right? People are having a conversation on a podcast, or someone is talking on a podcast like me right now. I'm just talking to you. And if something is over edited or under edited, it feels unnatural. And that's one of the trickiest things to look for if you're editing a podcast yourself, or if you're hiring someone to edit you. You have pauses, you have natural things that occur in your speech that if someone is just going through and methodically, mechanically cutting out all space and cutting out all filler words and cutting out too much stuff, it's going to feel unnatural. And that's actually one of the things that I look for in the editors that work for me. It's probably the reason that most of my editors are also recording engineers for music projects, musicians. They understand rhythm. They understand how to make something feel natural. So to me, that's what's most important in editing, is making sure that something feels natural. So I want to share some of these thoughts that Robin had in this article that was published. And it just sums up a lot of the things that I do and my editors do every time we touch a podcast. So she points out that humans, we really have incredible ears. Okay, especially for noticing bad edits in a podcast. And that's probably because what have we done as humans longer than anything? We've had conversations. We've talked to each other. It's not about writing, reading. It's not about filming things or recording things, but we've been talking to each other for a long time. So we don't need really formal training to recognize when something sounds weird or unnatural, right? We've got natural patterns and rhythms and things that go in our daily lives. And if something is really overly edited or under edited, it's noticeable. Okay. It's something that anyone who's listening to your podcast will notice. And one of the things that she does that I like, I don't do this, she says she closes her eyes and she just listens for a while. I don't really do this much anymore because my editors and I, usually we're working on the same show each week, so we get a sense. So we might listen to the guest for a little while to just get a sense of their natural speech pattern, natural voice. But that's something that you can do when listening to your podcast, listening to your guest. You want to start, and this was the first step that she mentions, is listening to the pacing. Okay, and this is what sounds natural, what pacing sounds natural for this person's voice. Are there places where they've left too much room or not? Or there's something like a run-on sentence or something like that, and they just kept going and going and going because they're nervous and they just keep talking and talking and talking. You as an editor can actually insert space. Okay, you can slow them down. So pacing is not just speeding things up. Like we will do that, if there's a interviewer asking a question and they rephrase it 3 times, we might clean that up to make it more clear and move forward quicker. Or if there's a lot of extra space, too long a pause, something like that, we might shorten that. But you can also add space. And that was really cool to see her mention that. The second thing that Robin mentions in this article is intonation and meaning. Okay, so people pick up on intonation in our conversation, but what she means by intonation is emphasis, right? We emphasize certain words. She mentions a good example of the difference between someone phrasing a question versus a statement, saying it's 3 o'clock versus it's 3 o'clock. You'll hear that there are different things. And so sometimes if the intonation is wrong, it can alter the meaning, and someone may not have realized because, again, they were nervous and they're talking and whatever. You can actually, as an editor, help them. If they said that same word or that same phrase in the right intonation, you can move it in and things like that and cut it around. You can also, she's talking about tools like Descript and things like that. Having a transcript, you can get it from Otter, whatever, is great because you might be able to find the same phrase in a different place in the interview really quickly and use that instead. Okay, so you can actually alter the meaning of a statement by your editing. Now, next week, I'm going to do a whole episode and I'm going to share another article about filler words. So these are the things, just sort of. I have pretty strong feelings like this, and I just want to leave the statement here, knowing that next week we're going to talk more about it, that with filler words, there's a point where you can remove too many. Okay, I know a lot of editors that remove all of it, and I don't like that. We tend to operate with like a 85% operation guidance for our editors, where you're going to remove most of them, but there are a lot of things that people use like that are actually supposed to be pauses, and it's them thinking, and so sometimes it's appropriate to leave it. The final thing that Robin suggests you do, and I like this, is that a review, to go back through and listen to your whole episode to make sure that there aren't any weird things that you missed, or that the cadence at the beginning of the episode matches the end, and things like that can be really important for making sure that your overall edit is cohesive and makes sense to the listener. So that kind of sums up what she talked about. The 4 steps again were to think about the pacing, think about the meaning, the intonation, the emphasis, think about your filler words, things like that, and then also do a final review. And she leaves us with one final thought here, which I liked. I'm going to read it for you. Is that speech can be difficult to edit without changing the intention or losing the natural voice of the actual person speaking. So Robin thinks it's important to always make sure you listen back and ask yourself, does this sound natural? It's kind of like what we just said with the review, because you want the audience to hear what you're saying with your podcast, not how it's been edited. So that's the key, is that a really good podcast edit sounds like it wasn't edited at all. And I love that. I think that's a great way to sum it up. A good edit doesn't sound like it was edited. And that's one of the keys when I'm teaching my podcast editors how to work on our client shows, is that we should be invisible. No one should know. I mean, that's, is there a word? We should be unheard. We should be non-existent in our editing technique, and making sure that we just don't show up, that no one hears an obvious edit and things like that. So I hope this little dive into editing and editing philosophy, I guess, if you will, was helpful. Next week, I'm going to do a whole episode about filler words, because trust me, that's a topic that a lot of people love to talk about. Some people edit too much. Some people don't edit enough. All those types of things. And I've got another article that I'm going to share then. So if you like this episode, the short episode about editing, you please share it. Please share this article. I thought it was a really great article. And I'll put it in the show notes. And I hope you'll be back with me next week. Until then, have a great week.